While sorting through my dad's desk, I discovered my adoption papers and letters from my birth mother, pleading to reunite after 2 decades. Father had been gone for 3 months when I finally worked up the courage to tackle his home office. The stroke took him suddenly. One day he was complaining about the neighbor's barking dog. The next he was in intensive care with machines keeping him alive. I'd been putting off sorting through his things, telling myself I wasn't ready. The desk drawers were exactly what you'd expect from a retired accountant. Rubber bands sorted by size, receipts filed chronologically, tax documents dating back to 1987. But in the bottom drawer, tucked behind a manila folder labeled insurance, I found a wooden box I'd never seen before. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom. Inside were documents that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. The adoption certificate was dated 3 days after my supposed birthday. My original birth certificate showed a different last name entirely, Sanchez instead of Miller. And underneath both papers was a thick stack of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, all addressed to my father in the same careful handwriting. I opened the first one with trembling fingers. Dated 18 years ago. Dear John, please, I'm begging you. Just let me see her once. I know we agreed to a closed adoption, but she's my daughter too. I think about her every single day. Does she like school? Is she happy? The signature at the bottom was Maria Sanchez, Olivia's birth mother. I grabbed another letter from 10 years ago. Liv turned 13 last week. I drove by Lincoln Middle School, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but I chickened out. I bought her a birthday present anyway. A silver bracelet. It's sitting in my jewelry box with all the other gifts I'll never be able to give her. My hands shook as I read letter after letter. Maria had been writing to father for decades, documenting every milestone she'd missed. She'd graduated from nursing school. She'd gotten married. She'd had another child, my half-brother Mateo. She must be in high school now. Read one letter from 5 years ago. Does she like music? Does she know she has a half-brother who asks about his big sister every day? I've saved every penny to start a college fund for her. The letters became more desperate over time. Maria had tried hiring attorneys, private investigators, even showing up at father's office. Each attempt was met with legal threats and restraining orders. I saw her at graduation yesterday. I stayed hidden in the parking lot, but I watched her throw her cap in the air. She's so beautiful, John. She has my mother's smile. I wanted to run to her, but I promised I'd respect your wishes. This is killing me. The letter stopped abruptly 2 years ago. I sat on father's office floor, surrounded by 20 years of secrets. Every time I'd asked about my birth parents growing up, he'd given me the same story. They were drug addicts who died in a car crash. He'd even taken me to a fake gravesite when I was 12. But Maria wasn't dead. She'd been alive and desperate to know me this entire time, living just 2 hours away. She'd been watching me grow up from a distance. The worst part was finding father's response letters, copies he'd kept of his cruel rejections. Ms. Sanchez, you relinquished all parental rights. Any further contact will be considered harassment. Liv believes you are deceased and I intend to keep it that way. Reading those responses made me physically sick. This wasn't the man who'd raised me, the patient father who'd helped with homework and attended every school play. This was someone consumed by grief and paranoia, willing to destroy lives to maintain his illusion of control. I found more evidence of father's deception hidden throughout the box. There were private investigator reports he'd commissioned to keep tabs on Maria's life, not to protect me, but to use against her if she ever tried to make legal contact. He knew about her marriage to Luis, about Mateo's birth, about her nursing career. He'd been monitoring her for years while telling me she was dead. There were also emails between father and his attorney, strategizing about how to maintain the lie. In one particularly chilling exchange, the attorney had suggested simply moving us out of state to make contact impossible. Father had seriously considered it. The subject continues to send correspondence despite multiple cease and desist orders, the attorney had written. Relocation would be the most effective permanent solution. Father's response was dated just 5 years ago. I can't uproot Olivia again. She's settled here, but keep monitoring the situation. If Maria escalates, we may need to consider more drastic measures. I spent the rest of that night reading every single letter, every legal document, Every piece of evidence of father's systematic campaign to erase Maria from my life. By dawn, I felt like I discovered I was living in some elaborate witness protection program. Except the person I was being protected from was my own birth mother. Maria had shared details about her life that painted a picture of someone completely different from father's lies. She'd been 17 when she got pregnant, abandoned by her boyfriend when she refused to get an abortion, and kicked out by her religious parents who called her a disgrace to the family. But instead of becoming the drug-addicted deadbeat father had described, she'd moved into a shelter for pregnant teens, worked 2 jobs while pregnant, and studied for her high school equivalency diploma at night. I want you to know, she'd written in one particularly heartbreaking letter, that choosing John and Susan wasn't giving up on you. I was giving you opportunities one couldn't provide. I was barely 18, had no family support, and was making $12 an hour at a grocery store. But I never intended to disappear from your life completely. I thought I'd be Aunt Maria, someone who could love you and watch you grow up while your real parents gave you stability. The original adoption agreement was in the box too, and it confirmed Maria's story. The plan had been for an open adoption with regular visits and ongoing contact. There were even specific clauses about Maria's involvement in major decisions, school choices, medical care, college planning. It was only after my adoptive mother, Susan, died when I was 3, that father had systematically violated every aspect of their agreement. I found records of the legal battles Maria had fought and lost. She'd hired 3 different attorneys over the years, each one eventually telling her the same thing. Adoption law heavily favors custodial parents, and without evidence of abuse or neglect, courts won't interfere with placement decisions. Her only option would have been a costly years-long custody battle that could have traumatized me in the process. I can't put her through a legal war, she'd written to one attorney. She's just a little girl who's already lost one mother. I won't be responsible for more trauma, even if it means I never see her again. That night I called my Aunt Eleanor, father's sister who'd always been the family truth teller. If anyone would give me straight answers, it would be her. Eleanor, I said, my voice shaking. I found some papers in father's desk about my adoption, about my birth mother. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Oh, sweetheart, she finally whispered. I wondered when this day would come. We all did. You knew about Maria, about the letters? Of course we knew. Your Uncle Robert, your cousin's grandpa before he died. We all tried to talk sense into your father, but he wouldn't listen. He was convinced Maria was going to steal you away. Eleanor told me everything father had hidden, painting a picture of the first few years of my life that was completely different from what I remembered. Maria hadn't been absent. She'd been an integral part of my early childhood. The first few years were beautiful, Eleanor explained. Maria would visit every few weeks. You adored her, called her Mama Maria. She'd bring books and toys, help with bedtime stories. Susan loved having another woman around who understood the adoption dynamics. You essentially had 2 mothers and everyone was happy. So what changed? Eleanor's voice grew heavy. When Susan got sick with cancer, the stress broke something in your father. He became obsessed with the idea that if Susan died, Maria would try to take you back. No amount of reasoning could convince him otherwise. Maria had never given any indication she wanted to disrupt the adoption. Quite the opposite, actually. She was incredibly respectful of boundaries. What happened after Mom died? Your father lost his mind with grief. The day after Susan's funeral, he changed the locks, changed his phone number, and started planning to move you across town. When Maria showed up for your regular visit that weekend, she found strangers living in your house. I felt sick. She didn't know Mom had died. Your father didn't tell her. Maria found out about Susan's death from the newspaper obituary 3 weeks later. She was devastated, not just because she'd lost a friend, but because she realized what it meant for her relationship with you. How long did it take her to find us after we moved? Months. She hired a private investigator. But your father had been thorough. New address, new phone number, even a new school for you. By the time she tracked you down, your father had already told you she was dead. Eleanor's voice broke. We all watched it happen, Liv. Your whole extended family knew what your father was doing, and we were powerless to stop it. Maria tried reaching out to us, begging us to intervene, but your father threatened to cut us off completely if we helped her. So everyone just let it happen. We were cowards, Eleanor admitted. We were afraid of losing you too. Your father was so volatile after Susan died, so paranoid about anyone he saw as a threat. We told ourselves he'd come to his senses eventually, that he'd let Maria back into your life when his grief settled. We never imagined he'd maintain the lie for 20 years. Did you ever try to contact her to let her know I was okay? Robert did once. He called her about 10 years ago just to tell her you were healthy and doing well in school. Maria broke down crying on the phone, begging him for just one photo, one update about your interests or friends. Robert was so shaken by her pain that he promised to try to convince your father to reconsider. What happened? Your father found out about the call and threatened to move you out of state immediately. He accused Robert of betraying the family, of putting you in danger. The fight was so bad they didn't speak for 2 years. I hung up feeling dizzy with anger and grief. My entire childhood had been built on a foundation of lies, and the woman who'd been desperate to love me had been painted as a villain to justify her absence. Even worse, my own extended family had been complicit in the deception, choosing their relationship with father over the truth. I immediately started searching social media. Maria Sanchez, Columbus, Ohio. It took less than 10 minutes to find her. She was stunning. The same dark eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. The same stubborn cowlick that made my hair stick up on the left side. The same crooked smile I'd inherited but never understood the origin of. Her profile showed a rich, full life. Photos of family barbecues, her son Mateo playing soccer, her working at Nationwide Children's Hospital wearing scrubs with cartoon characters, her husband Luis cooking elaborate dinners while she laughed in the background. But there was something wistful in her eyes in every photo. A sadness that never quite disappeared even when she was smiling. In pictures with Mateo, she sometimes looked just past the camera, as if she was thinking about someone who should have been there. And there, in her bio, missing my daughter Olivia, 23 years old now. Never stopped hoping, never stopped loving. My heart nearly stopped. She'd kept track of my age, kept my full name instead of the nickname everyone called me. And she'd never remarried her heart to completely start over. She'd built a life that always included space for me to return. I spent 3 sleepless days crafting the perfect message, deleting and rewriting it dozens of times. How do you reach out to someone who's been erased from your life? How do you apologize for 20 years of absence that wasn't your fault? How do you even begin to heal that kind of wound? Finally, I settled on something simple. Hi Maria. I think you might be my birth mother. I'm Olivia, but everyone calls me Liv. I just found your letters in my father's desk after he passed away 3 months ago. I'd like to talk if you're willing. I have so many questions and I'm so sorry it took this long to find you. I included my phone number and hit send before I could lose my nerve. She responded within minutes. Liv, oh my God, is it really you? I've been waiting for this message for 20 years. I'm shaking. I can't believe this is happening. Please call me, please. Day or night, I don't care what time. I love you so much. I never stopped loving you. My number is 614-555-0123. I stared at those 10 digits for an hour before finally dialing. She answered before the first ring finished. Liv. Her voice was exactly how I'd imagined, warm but tentative, like she was afraid I might hang up or disappear again. Hi, I said and immediately started crying. Oh baby, she whispered. I've missed you so much. Are you okay? Are you safe? God, I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. Tell me everything. Tell me about your life. Are you happy? Are you healthy? I'm okay. I managed between sobs. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I never knew to look for you. Father told me you were dead. He took me to a fake grave and everything. A fake grave? The pain in her voice was palpable. Riverview Cemetery. He even had a headstone made with fake names. I used to bring you flowers every Mother's Day. The silence that followed was heartbreaking. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Oh, sweetheart. I can't imagine how confusing and painful that must have been. All those years you were mourning parents who weren't dead while I was 2 hours away, thinking about you every single day. We talked for 6 hours that first night. She told me about her son Mateo, who was 15 and had always known about his big sister. About her husband Luis, who'd helped her write those letters and driven her past my school every year on my birthday, just hoping to catch a glimpse of me. About the college fund she'd been building since I was 5. Now worth almost $60,000. I have a photo album, she said hesitantly. Pictures of you from your school websites, newspaper clippings when you made honor roll, even a few I took from far away at public events. I know it sounds like stalking, but it's not stalking, I interrupted. It's love. Father convinced me you didn't want me, that you'd abandon me because I wasn't worth fighting for. But you never stopped fighting, did you? Never, she said firmly. Not for one single day. Even when the attorneys told me I had no legal options. Even when your father threatened restraining orders. Even when everyone said I should move on and start over. I couldn't give up on you. She told me about the lengths she'd gone to stay connected to my life. She'd volunteered at blood drives at my high school hoping to see me. She'd attended community theater productions I was in, sitting in the back row with a baseball cap pulled low. When I'd won the state art contest in 10th grade, she'd bought 3 copies of the newspaper and framed the article. I was at your high school graduation, she admitted. I wore sunglasses and stayed way in the back of the parking lot, but I watched you walk across that stage. I was so proud I couldn't stop shaking. Father knew you'd be there. Her voice turned bitter. I always told him in my letters when I'd be at your events. I thought maybe if he saw how much I cared, how I wasn't trying to disrupt your life, but just wanted to witness your milestones from a distance, he might soften his heart. I was naive. Did he ever respond to your letters? Only with legal threats. Every few years, his attorney would send me a cease and desist letter, warning me that any contact could be considered stalking, but I couldn't stop writing to you. It was the only connection I had. She told me about Luis, who'd entered her life when I was 8. He'd been recently divorced with no children of his own, and she'd been upfront about her situation from their first date. I told him I came with invisible baggage. She said that I had a daughter I couldn't see but would never stop loving. I expected him to run, but he said he understood what it meant to love someone from a distance too. His ex-wife had taken his stepson across the country, and he'd had to learn to love someone from a distance too. Luis had not only supported her quest to reconnect with me, he'd actively helped. He'd driven her to my school events, helped her write letters, and even researched legal options when new adoption reform laws were passed. He bought me a camera with a telephoto lens for my birthday one year, she said, laughing through tears, so I could take better pictures of you from far away. Most women get jewelry. I got spy equipment. She told me about Mateo's reaction when they'd explained he had a big sister he might never meet. He was about 7 when we told him, she said. He asked if you were dead and I said no, you were just somewhere we couldn't reach. He started drawing pictures of our family with 4 people instead of 3. Always leaving space for you. Every Christmas he'd ask Santa to bring his sister home. Does he resent me for taking up so much of your emotional energy? The opposite, she said. He's been my biggest supporter in staying connected to you. When I'd get discouraged when the attorneys would tell me to give up, Mateo would remind me that sisters don't abandon each other. He'd say, Mom, Liv doesn't know she has a family looking for her. We have to keep trying so she can find us. We made plans to meet the following weekend. She lived in Columbus, Ohio, just 2 hours away. She deliberately stayed close all these years just in case. The night before I was supposed to drive there, I barely slept. 23 years of wondering about my origins were about to be answered. But first I had something I needed to do. I drove to the cemetery where Father was buried, carrying the stack of letters and the wooden box. It was a gray October afternoon, the kind of day that makes everything look exhausted. I sat beside his headstone and read him every single letter out loud, all 247 of them. My voice was hoarse by the end. Dear Father, I said when I finished, I understand why you were scared after Mom died. Losing the love of your life broke something in you, and you were terrified of losing me, too. But Maria wasn't your enemy. She was Mom's friend and she could have helped you raise me. I pulled out one of his response letters, the cruelest one, where he'd threatened to move out of state if Maria didn't stop contacting him. This wasn't protection, Father. This was cruelty. You robbed me of a mother who wanted nothing more than to love me. And you robbed her of the daughter she fought to place in a good home. You kept all of this. Every letter, every legal document, every piece of proof of what you'd done. Part of you knew it was wrong, didn't it? Part of you knew I'd find out someday. An older man walking his dog stopped nearby, probably thinking I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. I forgive you because I know you were hurting, I continued. But I won't pretend what you did was right. Maria deserved better. I deserved better. And Mom deserved to have her wishes honored instead of buried with her. I left the letters on his grave weighed down with rocks. I hope you find peace, Father. And I hope somehow you understand that love isn't a finite resource. Loving Maria doesn't diminish what I felt for you. The next Saturday I drove to Columbus, Ohio with shaking hands and a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, according to her Instagram posts. Maria's house was a modest ranch with a well-tended garden and children's bikes in the driveway. The mailbox had Sanchez Morales painted in cheerful blue letters. She must have been watching from the window because the front door opened before I could knock. We stood there staring at each other for a full minute, both afraid to move in case we shattered the moment. She was smaller than I'd expected, barely reaching my shoulder with premature gray threading through her dark hair. But her eyes were exactly like mine. And when she smiled, I saw my own crooked grin reflected back at me for the first time in my life. "You're so beautiful," she said, tears streaming down her face. "So are you," I replied. She reached out tentatively like she was afraid I might disappear. I stepped into her arms and we both dissolved. 20 years of missing each other collapsed into that moment. We held each other in her doorway, sobbing like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. "I can't believe you're here," she whispered into my hair. "I can't believe you're real. I've dreamed about this moment so many times. I can't believe you waited for me," I replied. Mateo appeared from inside the house, lanky and awkward at 15 with my eyes and my stubborn cowlick and a soccer ball under his arm. "So you're the famous sister," he said, grinning. "Mom talks about you literally every day. It's honestly kind of annoying." "Mateo," Maria scolded, but she was laughing. "What? It's true. Liv would be starting college now. I wonder if Liv likes art like I do. Do you think Liv knows she has a brother? It's like living with a ghost sometimes. But a good ghost," he added quickly. "I always wanted to meet you." He was taller than both of us with an easy confidence that spoke of being raised with unconditional love. When he hugged me, it felt natural, like we'd been siblings all along instead of strangers. Luis appeared behind him, a quiet man with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of manual labor. He hung back to let us have our moment. But when Maria introduced us, he hugged me tight and whispered, "Welcome home, mija. Your mother's been counting the days." 20 years, 3 months and 16 days, Maria said, laughing through tears. "But who's counting?" They prepared for this visit like it was Christmas and my birthday rolled into one. Maria had cleaned the house until it sparkled, cooked enough food for an army, and set up the guest room with fresh flowers and a photo album on the nightstand. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to stay over," she said nervously. "But I wanted you to know you're welcome here. This is your home too if you want it to be." The photo album was overwhelming. Maria had documented my entire life from afar. Pictures she'd somehow gathered from school websites, social media screenshots, even local newspaper articles when I'd made honor roll or performed in school plays. She'd created a parallel version of my childhood, experiencing my milestones from a distance. "This is from your 8th grade science fair," she said, pointing to a blurry photo. "I volunteered to help set up just so I could see your project about renewable energy. You got 2nd place. You were there?" "I was there for everything I could manage. Piano recitals, art shows, soccer games. When you played JV sophomore year, I became an expert at blending into crowds." She showed me photos I'd never seen. Myself at 10 years old, completely unaware that my birth mother was taking my picture from across a school auditorium. Me at 13 walking out of the library while Maria sat in her car documenting another day in my life. "Wasn't it torture?" I asked, being so close but not being able to approach me. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But it was also the only way I could feel connected to you. Seeing you healthy and happy, watching you grow into this incredible person. It kept me going during the darkest times." That evening over dinner, Mateo asked the question I'd been avoiding. "So what happens now? Are you going to move here? Are we going to be a real family?" I looked around the table at Maria, who'd spent 20 years loving me from a distance. At Luis, who'd supported her through decades of heartbreak, and helped her raise a son who'd always known about his missing sister. At Mateo, who'd grown up hearing stories about the big sister he might never meet. "I don't know," I admitted. "This is all so new, but I want to try. I want to get to know all of you to figure out how to be a family after all this time apart." Maria reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "There's no pressure," she said. "We have time now, all the time in the world." But even as she said it, I could see the fear in her eyes, the terror that I might disappear again, that this reunion might be temporary. I'm not going anywhere, I said firmly. I've spent my whole life feeling like something was missing, and now I know what it was. You're not getting rid of me that easily. The transition wasn't seamless. 20 years of lies don't evaporate overnight. I struggled with anger toward father, guilt for not finding Maria sooner, and the surreal experience of suddenly having a family I'd never known existed. Some days I felt like I was betraying father's memory by loving the woman he'd worked so hard to erase. Other days I was furious at him all over again. Maria and I started slowly. Weekly dinners, phone calls every few days, getting to know each other as adults rather than trying to recreate a mother-daughter relationship that had been stolen from us. We had to learn each other's rhythms, preferences, ways of communicating. It was like being set up on the world's most important blind date. I don't want to be your mother, she said one evening about a month after we'd reunited. I mean, I am your mother, but I can't pretend I raised you. I don't want to compete with your memories of Susan, or try to parent someone who's already an adult. Then what do you want to be? I asked. She thought for a long moment. Your friend, maybe. Someone who loves you unconditionally, and wants to be part of your life going forward. I'd like that, I said. But can you also be the person who tells me embarrassing stories about my baby years, and gets emotional at my wedding someday? Absolutely, she said, tears in her eyes. Mateo was easier to connect with. He treated me like the big sister he'd always imagined, asking for college advice and showing me his soccer highlights. He had no baggage about our relationship. To him, I was simply the missing piece of his family that had finally come home. It's weird, he said one day as we walked around their neighborhood. I used to make up stories about what you were like. I imagined you were probably really smart and good at art since Mom is. Turns out I was right. What else did you imagine? That you'd be kind of sad, he said matter-of-factly. Mom always looked so heartbroken when she talked about you. I figured if you'd grown up without her, you'd probably feel that sadness too, even if you didn't know why. He was right. There had always been a hollow space in my chest that I'd never been able to name. Growing up, I'd felt different from other kids, like I was missing some essential piece of myself. I'd attributed it to being adopted. But now I realized it was the absence of Maria, the phantom limb of a relationship that had been severed too early. Do you miss your father? Mateo asked. It was a complicated question that I'd been wrestling with for months. I miss the father I thought he was, I said finally. But learning about what he did to Maria and to me changes everything. It's hard to grieve someone when you're also angry at them. Mom says grief and anger can exist at the same time, Mateo said. She's been angry at him for 20 years. But she also felt bad when he died because she knew how much you loved him. 3 months after our reunion, Maria asked if I wanted to see my baby photos. She'd kept everything from those first 3 years. Hospital bracelets, first birthday decorations, even a lock of hair from my first haircut. I was there for all of this, she said softly, flipping through the album. Your father didn't start erasing me until after Susan died. The photos showed a different version of my early childhood than I remembered. There I was as a toddler sitting on Maria's lap at Christmas. There was Maria teaching me to walk, feeding me birthday cake on my second birthday, reading me bedtime stories. I had no memory of any of it, but the evidence was undeniable. She'd been my second mother for the first 3 years of my life. Susan and I were friends, Maria explained. She understood that loving you wasn't a competition. We talked every day, shared parenting duties, made decisions together. She used to joke that you were lucky to have 2 mothers who adored you. That's when I learned the final devastating piece of the story. My adoptive mother, the woman I'd called Mom until she died when I was 3, had not only supported the relationship with Maria, they'd been genuine friends. Maria would visit regularly, and I'd known her as Mama Maria, who always brought the best presents and gave the best hugs. Susan made me promise to always be part of your life, Maria said, tears in her eyes. Even if something happened to her, I was supposed to help raise you. She said you needed as much love as possible from as many people as possible. So father betrayed Mom's wishes too. Grief changes people, Maria said gently. I don't think he was thinking clearly. He was so afraid of losing you that he destroyed the very support system Susan had wanted you to have. I started seeing a therapist to help process the complexity of my emotions. Dr. Evelyn Stone specialized in adoption trauma and helped me understand that my anger toward father didn't negate the love I'd felt for him, and that loving Maria didn't betray his memory. Your father was operating from a place of profound fear, she explained. When we're terrified, we sometimes make choices that create the very outcomes we're trying to prevent. He was so afraid of losing you that he isolated you from people who could have provided additional love and support. But how do I reconcile the father who read me bedtime stories with the man who kept those cruel letters? People contain multitudes, Dr. Stone said. Your father was capable of great love and terrible cruelty, often simultaneously. Accepting that complexity is part of healing. The more I learned, the angrier I became, not just at father, but at the system that had allowed him to sever a relationship that had been healthy and beneficial for everyone involved. I started researching adoption law, horrified to discover how little protection birth parents have once they've signed relinquishment papers. I began volunteering with adoption support groups, sharing my story, and advocating for better protections for birth-parent relationships. Maria joined me, speaking to prospective adoptive parents about the importance of honoring commitments to birth families. Open adoption isn't just better for birth parents, she'd tell them. It's better for children, too. Liv grew up with a hole in her heart that she couldn't name. She had questions I could have answered, medical history I could have provided, love I was desperate to give. Severing those connections serves no one. We started getting invitations to speak at adoption conferences and social worker training programs. Our story became a cautionary tale about what happens when fear overrides compassion, when parents prioritize their own insecurities over their children's needs. The tragedy isn't just that we lost 20 years together, Maria would say during our presentations. It's that Liv grew up believing she wasn't worth fighting for, while I lived with the guilt of thinking I'd failed her as a mother. Fear doesn't just destroy relationships, it destroys the people in them. A year after our reunion, I was planning my wedding to Noah, a man I'd been dating for 3 years. He'd been incredibly supportive throughout this whole journey, driving with me to meet Maria, holding my hand through the anger and grief, and welcoming my newfound family with open arms. The question of who would walk me down the aisle became complicated. Traditionally, it would have been father, but he was gone. My uncle Robert had offered, but it felt wrong to have someone who'd been complicit in the cover-up play such an important role. What if Maria walked with you? Noah suggested one evening as we addressed wedding invitations. Is that weird, having your birth mother walk you down the aisle? Weirder than having a fake grave for her while she sits in the front row, he replied. Besides, she's the one who's been fighting to be part of your life. She's earned the right to give you away. When I asked Maria, she broke down crying. I never thought I'd get to be part of your wedding, she said. I used to dream about it, helping you pick out a dress, giving you advice about marriage, dancing at your reception, but I never really believed it would happen. Well, it's happening, I said. And I can't imagine anyone else walking me down that aisle. My uncle Robert graciously stepped aside when I explained the situation. She should have been here all along, he told me privately. Your father was wrong and we all knew it. We should have fought harder to make him see reason. Why didn't you? Robert looked ashamed. Because we were cowards. We were afraid of losing you two. So we enabled your father's paranoia instead of standing up for what was right. Maria was the only one who had the courage to keep fighting even when everyone told her to give up. The wedding planning became a bonding experience for Maria and me. She helped me choose flowers, tasted cakes, and offered advice about marriage based on her relationship with Luis. The secret, she said as we looked at wedding dresses, is remembering that you're choosing to love someone every single day. Love isn't just a feeling. It's a decision you make over and over again. Is that how you felt about me during all those years apart? Every single day, she said firmly. Even when it would have been easier to give up, even when everyone said I should move on, I chose to keep loving you. That's what real love does. It endures. In her wedding speech, Maria said something that still makes me cry. 20 years ago, I thought I'd lost my daughter forever. I wondered if I'd made the right choice placing her for adoption. If I should have fought harder to keep her despite my circumstances. But watching Liv today, brilliant, kind, surrounded by love, I know that every sacrifice was worth it. The years apart were painful, but they led us to this moment. Liv, you were worth every tear, every sleepless night, every letter that went unanswered. Having you back is proof that some stories get their happy endings, even when they take longer than we hoped. Mateo gave a speech too, joking that he'd finally gotten the big sister he'd been bragging about since kindergarten. I may have had to wait 15 years to meet her, he said. But it turns out Liv is exactly as awesome as Mom always said she'd be. Plus, she's way better at helping with math homework than Mom is. Noah's speech thanked Maria specifically. Liv always felt like something was missing, like she was searching for something she couldn't name. Meeting Maria didn't just give her a mother back. It gave her the missing piece of herself. Thank you, Maria, for never giving up on her. The hardest part of this whole experience has been reconciling my love for Father with the magnitude of his betrayal. He wasn't a villain. He was a grief-stricken widower who made catastrophic decisions out of fear. But his choices robbed me of 20 years with a woman who loved me unconditionally, and robbed Maria of watching her daughter grow up. I still visit his grave sometimes, but now I bring updates instead of anger. I tell him about Maria's promotion to head nurse at the Nationwide Children's Hospital, about Mateo's acceptance to college on a soccer scholarship, about the grandchildren he'll never meet because he was too afraid to trust in love. I understand why you were scared, I told his headstone during my last visit. Losing Mom broke something in you. But Maria wasn't your enemy. She was Mom's friend and she could have helped you raise me. Instead of having one grieving parent, I could have had a village of people who loved me. Your fear created the very loneliness you were trying to protect me from. Maria and I have started a non-profit organization called the Olivia Foundation, using my middle name to honor both sides of my identity. We help other families navigate open adoption relationships and provide support for birth parents whose contact has been severed. We've helped reunite dozens of families and prevented countless others from being torn apart by fear and misunderstanding. Your story gives people hope, Maria said recently as we reviewed applications for our new support group. When they see that love can survive 20 years of separation, it helps them believe that their relationships can be repaired, too. One of our most successful programs is a mediation service for adoptive families struggling with open adoption agreements. We help birth parents and adoptive parents communicate their fears and boundaries in healthy ways, preventing the kind of breakdown that happened in my family. Most of these conflicts come from fear, Maria explained to a room full of social workers. Adoptive parents are afraid birth parents will try to reclaim their children. Birth parents are afraid they'll be forgotten or excluded. Both sides love the same child and want what's best for them, but fear makes them see each other as enemies instead of allies. We also lobby for legislative changes to adoption law, advocating for stronger protections for birth-parent relationships and clearer guidelines about when contact can be severed. The current system treats birth parents like sperm donors, I told a committee of state legislators. Once they sign those papers, they have fewer rights than divorced parents. That's not just wrong. It's harmful to the children these laws are supposed to protect. Last week, Maria and I were going through more of her saved memories when she pulled out a small jewelry box I'd never seen before. I bought this for your 16th birthday, she said. I know it's 10 years too late, but inside was a delicate silver necklace with a heart pendant. Engraved on the back were the words, "Love doesn't end. It waits." I had it made right after your father cut off contact, she explained. I wanted something that would remind me that even if I couldn't see you, my love for you was still real and still growing. I've carried it with me every day since then. I wear it every day now. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't about finding someone new. They're about finding someone who never stopped looking for you. The box of letters that started this whole journey sits on my bookshelf now, next to photo albums Maria and I make together. Sometimes I reread them, marveling at her persistence, her faith that someday we'd find each other again. Each letter is a testament to a mother's love, proof that bonds can survive decades of separation if they're strong enough. Mateo is applying to colleges now, and he's asked me to help him with his application essays. One of his topics is about family, and he wrote, "People always ask if it's weird having a sister I didn't grow up with, but the truth is Liv was always part of our family. She lived in Mom's stories in the empty bedroom we kept ready for her. In the fourth place, Mom would sometimes accidentally sit at the dinner table. When she finally came home, it wasn't like meeting a stranger. It was like a missing piece of our family puzzle finally clicking into place." Maria keeps a photo of the four of us, her, Luis, Mateo, and me, on her desk at work. Her colleagues say she lights up whenever she talks about her children, plural, and how long she waited to be able to use that word honestly. For 20 years, people would ask if I had kids, and I never knew how to answer, she told me recently. Saying yes felt like a lie since I wasn't raising you. Saying no felt like I was erasing you completely. Now I can finally say yes. I have 2 beautiful children without my heart breaking. Father thought he was protecting me from heartbreak. Instead, he was protecting me from the greatest love I've ever known. Maria didn't give birth to me and disappear. She gave birth to me and spent 20 years fighting to come home. Now she has. And for the first time in my life, I feel complete.